In our previous report, we ventured beneath scale and flame, examining how the dragons of Middle-earth might conquer the sky, and how they forge fire within their own throats. Yet a deeper question now emerges from the smoke. Is the ability to fly and breathe fire enough to call them biological weapons? If dragons are machines of war, then who conceived them? Hello, this is ORCOLOGIST, a devoted student of the beings that dwell at the edge of myth and memory. 1. Do cold drakes breathe ice? There is one certainty: cold drakes do exist in Tolkien's world. Modern fantasy has trained us to expect spectacle. In Season 7 of Game of Thrones, the Night King raises Viserion into an undead dragon whose breath freezes walls and men alike. A storm given wings. It is a powerful image, and one that has shaped how many imagine ice dragons. But did Sir Tolkien intend the same? Tolkien wrote in a very different age. He was a veteran of the First World War. A conflict defined not by cinematic frost, but by choking gas, poisoned air, and unseen death rolling low across trenches. There were no video games, no digital blizzards. His imagination was forged in smoke and iron. When Tolkien used the word cold, it carried layers of meaning. First, there is the idea of miasma, not flame, but fumes. In early accounts of the fall of Gondolin, dragon-like engines crawl across the battlefield, releasing fumes and reek, not blazing infernos, but suffocating clouds. Second, there is the concept of deadly breath. Imagine not shards of ice, but a colorless, suffocating vapor, air so cold and toxic that lungs fail and blood slows in the veins. Not a transformation into a frozen statue, but a quiet internal collapse. Third, cold may describe temperament. A cold drake is frigid in spirit, calculating, silent, predatory. Unlike the fiery wrath of Smaug, whose rage burns outward, a cold drake kills without spectacle. No roaring inferno, no theatrical blaze, only inevitability. There is no evidence that Sir Tolkien drew inspiration from World War I to create the cold drakes. However, the novelist frequently draws inspiration from his personal experiences. So, we can understand in Tolkien's English then, cold drake does not necessarily mean a dragon that breathes snow and ice. More likely, it refers to dragons incapable of breathing fire. The most famous among them is Skatha, who dwelt in the Grey Mountains, the arid Mithrin, after Morgoth's fall. In Appendix A of The Lord of the Rings, Skatha is remembered for plundering the vast hordes of the dwarves. Like Smaug, he was consumed by greed. Gold for him was not currency. It was dominion made visible. And here, something curious emerges. If we accept the earlier theory that dragons hoard gold partly as a thermal regulator, a heat sink for bodies that burn like furnaces, then Skatha's obsession suggests something important. His physiology may not have been cold at all. Across Tolkien's writings, dragons, all dragons, radiate immense internal heat. They are less like reptiles and more like walking reactors. Their bodies are engines of relentless metabolism, venting energy into the world around them. For fire drakes such as Smaug or Glaurung, this heat manifests in flame, hot enough to melt steel. But even a cold drake of Skatha's magnitude would require extraordinary metabolic output to sustain such colossal musculature. Logically, his body too would burn hot beneath the scales. So does this contradict the idea of an ice dragon? Not necessarily. In Tolkien's legendarium, ice dragons are not creatures of snow breath and frozen storms. They are dragons that do not wield fire, dragons whose weapons lie elsewhere. Strength, venomous fumes, crushing force, a killing cold of spirit rather than temperature. They do not conquer with blazing annihilation. They conquer with suffocation, with muscle, with silence. And if Scartha did not breathe fire, then what weapons did he wield? 2. Other fearsome weapons of the dragon. Although Sir Tolkien does not devote many pages to his story, the scattered records make one thing clear. Scartha terrorized the North for a very long time before he was slain by the hero Fram around TA 2000 to 2001. He was remembered by a title both simple and ominous, the Great Worm of the North. That title is not poetic decoration, it is anatomical description. A worm, in Tolkien's terminology, often refers to a wingless, serpentine dragon, vast, reptilian, earthbound. And as a cold drake, a dragon without flame, Scartha would have required compensatory strengths to dominate entire regions without the advantage of firepower. Without the artillery of flame, Scartha's body must have been engineered for overwhelming force. Enormous muscle mass would compensate for the absence of ranged destruction. His weight alone could crush ranks of soldiers. His coils could collapse fortifications. His claws and teeth, hardened like living siege tools, would tear through dwarven armor forged by master smiths. If Smaug is a strategic bomber, then Scartha is a heavy tank, armored, relentless, unstoppable at close range. His hide was not merely tough, it was functionally defensive plating, a biological composite armor grown, not forged. Perhaps the most telling detail is this. An entire race of warriors and blacksmiths lost their treasure to Scartha and could not reclaim it themselves. The dwarves are not weak. They are disciplined, well-armed, and fiercely proud. That they failed to retake their hoard proves that Scartha's power exceeded not just individuals, but armies. So Scartha may not have breathed fire, but he was a fortress of muscle and scale. And when we broaden our view beyond Scartha, we see that Tolkien's dragons are complete combat organisms, adaptable, versatile, devastating. So is that the extent of their power? Fire and strength? Not even close. The most dangerous weapon: words. Unlike many traditional Western dragons, these creatures are not mindless beasts. They are articulate, cunning, psychologically perceptive, and their words are weapons. In The Hobbit, Smaug does not immediately kill Bilbo. Instead, he studies him. He flatters, he questions, he subtly sows doubt between Bilbo and the dwarves. This is psychological warfare, probing for fractures within alliances. But the true master of mental domination is Glaurung, father of dragons. In The Children of Húrin, Glaurung's influence devastates the lives of Turin Turambar and Nienor. His power goes beyond intimidation. He hypnotizes, he manipulates memory, he engineers tragedy. If we remove the label magic and examine it through a scientific lens, Glaurung's abilities resemble a fusion of psychological phenomena. Megalophobia, the shock of scale. Megalophobia describes the fear or paralysis triggered by objects of overwhelming size, aircraft carriers, colossal statues, structures dwarfing human proportion. Glaurung is described as immense, second in size only to Ankalagan the Black. For Nienor, facing such magnitude may have triggered catastrophic psychological shock. The human brain, when overwhelmed by trauma, can activate dissociative amnesia, a defense mechanism that erases memory to protect the self. Glaurung exploits this vulnerability. He does not merely frighten, he overwrites. Cognitive manipulation, gaslighting. Turin, however, is not easily paralyzed by fear. He possesses immense willpower. So, Glaurung adapts. Instead of terror, he uses cognition. He presents half-truths, painful truths. He reminds Turin of Beleg's death, of family suffering. then reframes those truths to amplify guilt and pride. This is psychological manipulation at its most refined. The victim makes the catastrophic choice himself, believing it to be rational. The serpent's eye, authority, and aura. In Tolkien's symbolic language, eyes are conduits of will. Glaurung carries not only his own cunning, but the malice of Morgoth. When he locks eyes with a victim, it establishes a direct spiritual connection, a domination of presence. His voice is described as rhythmic and mesmerizing, inducing a trance-like state. From a behavioral science perspective, his process is systematic. To better understand this layered manipulation, we can compare it to elements found in The Lord of the Rings. Like Grima Wormtongue manipulate King Theoden, Glaurung bends truth rather than inventing lies. He attacks self-esteem through logic and guilt. Like Saruman, he exerts oppressive authority through voice and presence. Like the One Ring, he exploits inner weakness, pride, desire, insecurity, leaving spiritual scars that persist even after his death. Logic, authority, desire. Glaurung weaponizes all three. Fire is only one aspect of a dragon's arsenal. Physically, they are among the most formidable organisms in Middle-earth, engines of muscle, endurance, and destruction. But their most terrifying weapon is invisible. Speech, manipulation, psychological domination. Flame destroys cities, words destroy destinies. And at this point we might assume that once a dragon is slain, the threat ends. No more fire, no more hypnotic gaze, no more whispered corruption. But does the death of a dragon truly mean safety? Or does its shadow remain, long after its body falls? 3. Dragons, the perfect weapon, even in death. When Glaurung, father of dragons, was finally slain by Turin Turambar, it was not a clean victory. It was not the triumphant fall of a monster followed by relief and silence. It was biological horror. In The Children of Húrin, Tolkien describes the moment when Turin drove his black blade Gurthang up into Glaurung's belly. A torrent of hot blood surges over him. The pain is blinding. The poisonous breath lingers. Turin collapses as though dead. To understand this, we might compare it, cautiously, to the xenomorphs of Alien, whose blood is molecular acid. But Tolkien's dragons seem even more complex. Their blood is not merely corrosive. It is a fusion of extreme heat and chemical toxicity. Let us examine two possible hypotheses. Hypothesis 1, thermal fluid. A dragon's body, as we have discussed, functions like an internal furnace. To sustain such mass and metabolic intensity, ordinary blood, water and hemoglobin, would be insufficient. Hypothesis 2, acidity and toxicity, the venomous blood. Tolkien also writes that dragon blood withers vegetation and pollutes streams. This suggests not heat alone, but chemical aggression. Like the xenomorph's acid, dragon blood may possess extremely low pH or contain superdigestive enzymes capable of breaking down organic proteins in seconds. The central paradox: how do dragons survive their own blood? Here lies the most perplexing biological question. How can a creature circulate superheated, corrosive fluid without destroying itself? Several possibilities emerge. Protective internal linings. Much like the human stomach contains hydrochloric acid without digesting itself, dragon blood vessels may be lined with extraordinary mucosal layers, perhaps heat-resistant bioceramic proteins unknown to human science. Thermal insulation. Between vessels and vital organs, thick layers of specialized fat and connective tissue could function as insulating shields. Regenerative physiology. Dragons may harness the high temperature of their blood to accelerate cellular regeneration, repairing microscopic damage as quickly as it occurs. In this model, the dragon's body is a closed thermal chemical system, delicately balanced, terrifyingly efficient. If xenomorph blood is molecular acid, then Tolkien's dragon blood is biological lava, molten, toxic, and volatile. And the danger does not end with death. A fallen dragon is not a harmless carcass. It is a chemical disaster site. And yet, perhaps the most enduring toxin a dragon leaves behind is not chemical. It is psychological. After Scartha's death, his horde sparked conflict that led to Fram's own demise at the hands of the dwarves. After Smaug fell, the treasure of Erebor ignited mistrust, pride, and bloodshed. In the case of Thorin Oakenshield, the dragon died, but the dragon within his heart did not. This phenomenon is often called dragon sickness, a contagion not of flesh but of desire. The dragon's body decays, its blood cools, but greed lingers, spreading silently from gold to mind. That, however, is a study for another time. Even in death, a dragon remains dangerous. Its blood burns, its corpse poisons, its treasure corrupts. So we return to our central question. Are Tolkien's dragons merely living creatures of fantasy, or are they something closer to biological weapons? 4. Dragons, a terrifying biological weapon, and more. Let us return to the earliest ages of Arda, when the world was still young, and Morgoth stood in open war against the Valar, against elves, against men. Orcs alone were not enough. They were numerous, yes, but not decisive. Morgoth required something greater, something catastrophic. And so, the dragons entered the history of the world. But there is a detail here that is often overlooked, and it is crucial. Dragons were not created by Morgoth. They were bred. Why? If Morgoth was the most powerful Dark Lord in existence, why could he not simply create dragons from nothing? Why was he forced instead to twist, hybridize, and reshape? The answer is simple. He could not. Within Tolkien's metaphysical framework lies a central theological principle: evil cannot create. Only Eru Ilúvatar possesses the secret fire, the flame imperishable, the power of true creation. Morgoth, for all his might, did not wield it. He could only corrupt what already lived, distort what already breathed, graft horror onto life. When we view dragons as hybrid organisms, biological constructs forged through corruption rather than divine creation, their complexity suddenly makes sense. They are not mythical accidents, they are engineered aberrations. If we trace their development as though observing a military research program, a pattern emerges. An arms race. The earliest of their kind, such as Glaurung, were land-bound, massive, fire-breathing, but wingless. They crawled across the battlefield like living siege engines, the Mark I tanks of a primordial war. But by the time of the War of Wrath, dragons had evolved. Wings unfurled, fire rained from the sky. In the form of Ankalagan the Black, they became airborne catastrophes, strategic bombers of mythic scale. This progression feels disturbingly familiar. Sir Tolkien fought in the Battle of the Somme in 1916. He witnessed tanks grinding across trenches, flamethrowers turning men into shadows, aircraft transforming the sky into a battlefield. Tolkien always denied direct allegory, yet he never denied that his world was shaped by his experience. And dragons, they bear the imprint of mechanized war. They are fantasy's answer to industrialized destruction. Consider the roll call: Scartha, Smaug, Glaurung, Ankalagon. None bring peace, none nurture, none create. They are singular in purpose, annihilation. And that is what makes Tolkien's dragons so distinct from the benevolent or wise dragons of other traditions. These are not ancient mentors. They are intelligent, calculating, psychologically aware, and armed with biological weaponry, fire, venom, terror, corruption of the mind itself. They are perhaps the most perfected biological weapons Middle-earth ever endured. Yet questions remain. If they are both sentient and engineered for war, are they psychologically stable? Do they seek dominion for ideology or instinct? Could there ever have been something like a dragon civilization? Those mysteries we will examine in another document. For now, we close this report. This is ORCOLOGIST.